to welcome you to Homo Politicus today. This is Enterprise TV. Kingsley Bass is my name. Let's talk about happenings within the Nigerian National Assembly, precisely the Senate. You can consider that the highest lawmaking body in the country. And yeah, there's a fresh wave of controversy which has hit the Nigerian senators. Senator Natasha Akpabio has resubmitted a petition alleging sexual harassment by the President of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio. And this time, the petition carries the backing of her constituents. And this, of course, brings new weight to the claims she has made against the President of the Senate. And the Senate has referred the matter to its Committee on Ethics, Privileges and Code of Conduct for investigation with a 4-week deadline to submit its findings. But beyond the petition, tensions in the Senate chamber on Thursday did rise with allegations of procedural breaches against Senator Natasha surfacing, and that was raised by the Chief Whip, Senator Mongunu. Well, that is another tension, if you like. But away from that, the Senate still on Thursday considered suspending Senator Natasha Akpabio for 6 months following findings by the committee, which cited a violation of Senate rules. And that is that with that. Well, let's get down to the conversation today. I'm joined virtually by barrister and solicitor of the Supreme Court of Nigeria, Maduka Onwukeme. Maduka, many thanks for joining me today. How are you doing?
Good afternoon, Kingsley. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Appreciate your joining. Let's very quickly talk about the legal first perspective to this. How does things work with the submission of petitions? We saw the submission of that petition first by Senator Natasha representing the good people of Kogi Central, and that was on the same day dismissed, more like trashed completely by the committee responsible, that's the panel responsible for looking into the allegations. And they said it is dead on arrival because she did not, or she just, unilaterally signed that. Now she has resubmitted. How does things work, and what should the Nigerians know?
Okay, well, let me start by saying that the Senate itself is governed by rules made by the Senate. If you remember, this whole thing came from the reassignment of sitting positions. That was when you have this, the outburst from Senator Natasha Akpabio, where she said she was being silenced and all. And the explanation there was that based on Senate rules, there is a sitting arrangement for every senator. And based on their sitting arrangement, they can now be organized to speak. And even speaking in the Senate is based on based on the rules. You are appointed to speak or to present a motion or present a petition. So rules are important, but I don't think there are issues of, how will I call it? These are just rules made for the orderly conduct of business in the Senate. I don't know whether you understand. We have the saying that law is in it for man and not man for the law. Why those rules are in place so that the Senate can conduct its business and then, deliver on its constitutional duties. So it doesn't mean that the Senate will be chasing or looking after whether these rules have been complied with instead of doing what it's meant to do under the law. So what happened yesterday was on the previous day was Senator Natasha Akpabio had presented her petition, and they said in accordance with the rules, that petition ought to have been signed by her constituents and the rest of that. She had to stand up and say she was standing on privilege and quoted some rules of the House, and she had to present a petition on her behalf, and she was told to go and present it and all. So those things are merely procedural. I am shocked that the Senate would, look away from the gravity of the allegations contained in the petition and start going after issues of technicalities, which is merely rules to ensure that Senate proceedings are not rowdy. But it seems these rules are now being used to punish Senator Natasha, or being used to shield the principal members of the Senate from accountability or from performing their functions. So that's basically what I can say about rules.
So now that she has resubmitted, right, and this time she says she has the backing of a constituent, who, by the way, we saw on Wednesday protests. They did arrive in their numbers at the National Assembly complex, protesting, demanding the resignation of the President of the Senate, Senator Godswill Akpabio, who has, by the way, been supported by his wife, saying that he's a very disciplined man. But before we get to those, matters around gender and the power dynamics in terms of the politics around this, let's talk some more about this procedural concerns and political maneuvering. The fact that she has resubmitted this petition, do you think this shows the persistence? And maybe some persons think she has, she has something. You know what they say in local parlance? She has some receipt. And that the way she's going, the way she's pressing consistently, you'd imagine that after the first petition was set aside by the panel, she could have well just maybe relaxed a bit. But she's persistent. She's still persisting. What do you think? And you're confident too that the panel would be dispassionate in handling or investigating the allegations against the President of the Senate?
Well, first of all, I would say that, under Nigerian law, anybody who alleges something has to prove it. So Senator Natasha presenting a formal petition is what is expected. And I don't expect a woman at her age, her professional qualification, her standing as a senator, to make allegations of sexual misconduct against the President of the Senate without having strong evidence to back it up. And from her narration, she said there's been series of, sexual misconduct or actions depicting sexual harassment from the Senate President. So I expect, just like you said, I expect her to have receipt. I expect her to have those things submitted alongside her petition. And of course, there should be investigations, there should be a hearing, she should be able to meet members of the committee, the ethics committee, to throw more light on her petition, swear on oath and adopt those, the content of her petition, as well as present evidence, call witnesses if she has any. She made mention of telephone records and the rest of that. She made mention of meeting the Senate President with her husband, and also I expect these people will likely be witnesses. But then I would say the action of the Nigerian Senate has been less than desirable in this whole thing. I am even surprised that the Senate Committee on Ethics and Disciplinary Matters is investigating this matter due to the comments being made by a lot of senators, and even I think the chief whip of the Senate saying the lady should be, or the Senator Natasha should be suspended. You had the head of the committee saying something about they are recommending a suspension for 6 months, or she apologizes. That is the head of the committee that will investigate allegations of sexual harassment against the Senate President. I would have expected, I've heard people call Akpabio to resign for investigation, but I will not hold that line of asking Akpabio to resign or Senator Akpabio to resign, because these are mere allegations. But I do not expect Senator Akpabio to preside over a Senate and preside over a Senate that has a committee investigating him. It's not done anywhere. If he wants the Senate to investigate him, then Akpabio has to step down. He can't be Senate President and be presiding over a Senate where a committee of the Senate he heads probably appointed the committee members and the head of that committee and be investigating him.
Correct me, Counsel, if I'm wrong. I hear the way this works. There's a Senate committee, there's a separate one which has recommended, her suspension, right? And then there's the one who's supposed to, we hear this particular one is independent, not nominated or selected by the President of the Senate or the leadership of the Senate. So do you still, with that?
It is my own issue. Even if the President of the Senate will not will I say, recommend or appoint the panel. He is heading the Senate. Do you understand? All senators are equal. But even though all senators are equal, there is the primus inter pares. There's the one who is the leader of the Senate. There's the one who says, take that seat. There's the one who says, sit there. There's the one who points out to you and tell you, stand up and make your contribution. There's one who will preside over. Now they are calling on the Senate President, or that the Senate should suspend Natasha based on a recommendation. Who will head that hearing? Is it not the Senate President? Or if he says, I can't head this particular hearing, I'll hand over to the Deputy Senate President. But he's still the Senate President. Would you think there will be justice in that kind of gathering? The right thing would be, if the Senate would in any way hear this petition, then the Senate President must step down. He has to resign. Or otherwise, he should hand over the investigation to an independent body outside of the Senate, outside of the legislature to investigate. We have the ICP, if you remember, in the case of the University of Calabar, professor of law and dean of the Faculty of Law, Professor Indifon, you remember?
Yes.
Yes, Professor Indifon, even though he wasn't the VC, but he was suspended from office while the university investigated him. And even at that, you had the ICPC coming in to investigate and is currently prosecuting him. So if the Senate President, his hands are clean, as he's trying to tell us, he should let this case be investigated by the ICPC, the independent, corrupt practices and related offenses commission. Let the ICPC investigate.
Councillor Maduka we're talking about the man who's the number 3 citizen in the country. Do you think that we're looking at some political maneuvering here? Do you think that political maneuvering is a play to put it some...
And that's why because,
pardon me, if you say, again, lots of persons have said step aside. And you are saying, well, it may be, at first you said, you don't think, you won't toe that line. But again, you said he should maybe do that so that, and allow for a free, fair investigation. But we're talking about the number 3 citizen here. There are those who look at this and say, this is one lady who is trying to bring down not just the number 3 citizen, but an institution, and they would not let that be. I suppose that's what some of the noise or whispers. Well, not whispers really, because you've heard senators, say that clearly, and they've, not supported fellow Senator Natasha. What do you think in this direction? Do you think this could happen? And this could be a precedent for a lot more that could happen, but will this happen?
No, this is what I'm saying. I didn't say Akpabio should step down. I said it's mere allegation.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is, if Akpabio decides that the Senate should investigate him,
yes,
it does not make sense for Akpabio to be Senate President when either the Senate, a committee of the Senate, he set up or set up by anybody still in the Senate, or the Committee on Ethics and Discipline, or petitions or public petitions investigating. It doesn't work that way. It can't work.
All right.
He has to either he steps down as the Senate President to allow for an independent investigation where he cannot influence anybody in respect of the investigations that are to be conducted, or Akpabio should honorably say the Senate cannot handle this matter.
By the way,
as president, let the ICPC handle it, investigate, and the ICPC has the powers to prosecute.
Okay,
because
by the way, the panel has 4 weeks, yeah? Is it possible for the Senate President to say, okay, in the next 1 month, or just step aside, there's a deputy Senate President, so he could do the job, preside over our plenary, while the panel do what they do. And by the way, when we keep saying... I'm sorry, just before you comment, yeah? When we say an individual should step aside, does that mean does that mean that without that person occupying that seat within the period of the investigation, does it mean the person cannot manipulate the process?
Okay, now this is the issue. The issue is not even about stepping aside. Now, Akpabio was not born as Senate President. He was elected as the Senate President in the Senate. The office of the Senate President is bigger than Akpabio. The office of the Senate President has been there since 1999, since we started this public. And before Akpabio, the Senate Presidents have come and go. So if Akpabio leaves the seat of the Senate President, another person will take over. So we have to separate the person from the office. Now, you said something about a whole institution has been accused, because this is the leader of an institution being accused. And now, we are calling for investigations. How right is it that that same institution will be muddled up with investigating itself when the head of that institution who was accused of this, who is the main person who was accused, and it's reflected or yet affected the image of this institution? How look at it, how right would it be that this same person is in the office, sitting atop this institution and directing this investigation? It doesn't make sense.
Okay. Very quickly, we've got to go soon, Councillor Maduka. But just before we do so, one of the reasons the panel dismissed the first petition submitted by Senator Natasha was, besides her solely signing the petition, was that this matter is in court. Akpabio's wife has filed a suit, charges against Senator Natasha. Senator Natasha did first, went to court against the President of the Senate. And they said, well, this matter is in court, and so let the courts, and so they cannot sit sub judice, against this. I'd like you to speak directly to that. This is within your forte directly, and the legal implications of the Senate committee sitting on this particular one.
Well, I know the matter in court. Matters are issues bordering on defamation. Senator Natasha had sued the Senate President and his aides to court over some comments they made about her character on Facebook.
Yes.
This comes from the unfortunate incident where they had the shouting match between the Senate President and Senator Natasha in the Senate. I don't know whether you remember.
Sure.
So some aide of the Senate President made some posts which she considered defamatory character.
Pancaking.
So she sued the aide. Now, Senator Akpabio's wife has sued her for defamation of character, claiming that her accusations against her husband has defamed her as the wife of the Senate President. So the issue at the court has to do with defamation, not the issues of sexual harassment. I don't know whether you understand.
Definitely. Do.
As we are now, because if the issues of sexual harassment should even go to court, it's not to the because we have the Sexual Harassment Prohibition Act. I think there's an act of 2015 or thereabout that prohibits sexual harassment. So if she had sued, because you can sue for civil, reliefs for damages and the rest of that, for sexual harassment. You can even sue an organization. Employees are allowed to sue organizations where they are harassed sexually and the organization has not done much. So you see, the Senate has a lot at stake here. Because what is being said is that the Senate is not has not provided a conducive environment for senators, females alike, to work without being sexually harassed. So now, as it stands, there is no issue of sexual harassment in court. The issue in court is the issue of defamation.
Okay.
And do not forget, Natasha had filed a suit trying to stop the ethics committee from, going ahead to suspend or investigate and the rest of that over the outburst she had with the Senate President. And that matter, I know an injunction was granted.
Yes.
In the Senate. So the issue of sexual harassment is not in court. But even at that, with all the things you've mentioned about whether the matter is in court or not in court, or the Senate is dragged in, or there's even an order against the Senate, it still doesn't make sense that the Senate is investigating this allegation. Let a third party do it. Let ICPC do it, or let the police do it.
All right, very quickly, two sides before we go, or 2 points before we go. One, is considering your comment about this, and I'll say this respectfully about the lawmakers. We're talking about lawmakers who gave a reason why they dismissed the petition by the serving senator. That's the reason being that there's a matter in court, and it's the same matter. They don't want to act sub judice. Meanwhile, it's a different matter, completely. And they are lawmakers; they should know the law. That is one. And then the second thing too is, as you said, there's a court order stopping the Senate committee from attempting to suspend Senator Natasha. Yet they are discussing. In fact, they've recommended that she be suspended for 6 months. What does this say about this Senate committee, the Senate, and the lawmaking body in Nigeria, and that obedience to the law and to court orders?
Okay, Mr. Kinsley, permits me to narrate a short story to you in answer to your question. You see, this morning we got the news that the Police Service Commission had demoted and retired some officers. Some serving officers who went to court against the police to say they should extend their tenures. That many of them were employed as, or rather, they joined the police as recruits. And midway, they went to get education, and they now joined as cadets. So when the time of their enlistment in the force was taken as the time when they got in as recruits, but they are arguing that no, we got in as cadets. And when they got to the mandatory age for retirement, the mandatory 30 years, many of them remained in service, and there have been calls for extension. They've gone to court to say the court should interpret. And while that was happening, guess what happened? They were all thrown out of the police. Not just thrown out, they were thrown out, and their retirement dates were backdated. The implication of that, some of them who were promoted to AIGs, DIGs, they come back to their former ranks. And by law, they may have to forfeit all the salaries they have collected from the period they were meant to retire up until now that they've been asked to go. So it still boils down to this same issue of the rule of law. And a lot of these people who were affected by this were even lawyers in the police, the senior advocates. So, and people were asking, when this guy was in the police, how many times did he advise the police to obey court orders? Today, he is at the receiving end. We keep saying this. You see the same senators disobeying the court and all. Someday, they are going to come back, they are going to go to the court, and they will seek the relief of the court, and they will see how it feels. Because when we say this, one of the perks of power in Nigeria is to think you can disobey court orders, disregard the court, and nothing will happen to you. But one day you will need the court. And the day you will need the court, and you go to the court to be saved, somebody else will also disregard that order of the court, and you see how it feels. That will be my answer.
Well, just a moment ago, I was going to say Senator Maduka, but thankfully that didn't drop. Said still. Legal counsel Maduka Onwukeme, barrister solicitor of the Supreme Court of Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining me and Homo Politicals today to talk about this very important matter. And by the way, again, I'll keep saying that this, from my point of view, is a major distraction for the 2025 budget. It's been passed, signed, sent to by the president, and no one is talking about budget padding this year 2025 because you know why. Well, that's Homo Politicals today. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kingsley. Thank you.
That's the show today. Make sure to drop your comment in the comment section. I'll be reading and responding as well. And make sure to follow, like, share this content across other platforms as well. Kingsley Bass is my name. It's been Homo Politicals on Enterprise TV. Until next time, bye and God bless you.